The honourable member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, the turmoil at IRCC continues. I have an Australian-trained doctor stuck in the department's quagmire. We have badly needed skilled tradespeople who want to come to Canada lost in the logjam, yet no delays in getting citizenship for ISIS terrorists who produce videos dismembering victims. Same with human traffickers needing a court-banned passport replaced. Mr. Speaker, what are the twisted priorities of the immigration minister? Can you focus on letting people into our country who want to heal Canadians, not to kill or traffic them, and to build the homes instead of blowing them up?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know why we give this guy the time of day. We drummed this guy out of our party because he covered up allegations of sexual assault against him and was fined by the military by it. He's so bad the Conservatives don't even want him in his party, and he was so afraid of the Green Party leader, he's now sitting over there. He knows precisely the answer to those questions. His office has never brought a single case to me. They're lazy, they don't get anything done, and he just does this for his social media, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Yes, buddies, with the opening rope.
It is very important. It is order, please. It is very important that all members are extended the courtesy and the respect that is owed to all members who sit in this place. I will, if necessary, come back to this House as I would review this matter.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member from Kelowna Lake Country.
The Prime Minister tried to distract Canadians with a sudden 2-month temporary tax trick. The NDP Liberals have doubled housing costs, doubled food bank use, and doubled the debt. And in just a few months, the NDP Liberals plan to raise taxes on all the very same items they claim they're giving Canadians a tax break on. Common sense Conservatives will axe the carbon tax on everything for everyone forever and take the GST off new homes sold to stimulate home building and save families money. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems that the Conservative member has invented a new slogan to oppose what is a tax break for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure I understand the Conservative position on this. In fact, what we are doing is lowering taxes for Canadians so that they could keep more money in their pockets, Mr. Speaker, and yet the Conservatives are opposing it. Interesting. The Conservative leader actually called this a trick. Well, actually, I think what we're seeing is that the Conservative leader is trying to be the Grinch that stole the holidays, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, the NDP Liberal coalition is back. Remember when the NDP leader said, Liberals are too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. He should win an acting award. He announced his confidence again in the Liberal Prime Minister, and together they'll continue their plan of quadrupling the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Here's a common sense solution. Axe the carbon tax on everything for everyone forever. Cheaper gas, groceries, and home heating, and everything that's shipped. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we just announced a tax break for Canadians. In fact, Canadians will see that they are not going to be paying federal taxes on everyday items like takeout food, Mr. Speaker, like beer, like wine, children's toys, children's clothes, Mr. Speaker. And you know what also came out? BMO and many others are significantly revising their growth forecasts for Canada in the next few months, Mr. Speaker. This is good for our small businesses. This is good for our economy. It's good for Canadians. I guess it's just bad for Conservatives.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, after 9 years of this Prime Minister, Canadians cannot afford to even feed themselves. And Food Banks Canada reports 2 million visits in 1 month. The 2024 report card on child and family poverty in Canada showed the largest jump in child poverty on record. Food prices rose 36% faster in Canada than the U.S., a gap that opened after the Liberal NDP carbon tax. Axe the carbon tax on everything for everyone forever. Cheaper gas, groceries, and home heating, and everything that's shipped. Will the Prime Minister just call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
You know, Mr. Speaker, it never ceases to amaze me that the Conservatives don't really seem to understand and vote against every measure that we have taken to help Canadian families, whether it's the Canada Child Benefit, whether it is $10 a day childcare across this country, whether it is the tax GST holiday that we just announced yesterday, Mr. Speaker. We are there for Canadians. We invest in them each and every day. I'd like to know why the Conservatives continue to vote against Canadians, vote against the things they need, whether it's pharmacare, dental care, anything else. We are here for Canadians and will continue to fight for them.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.
Millions of dollars in fraud, the other Randy still in hiding, numerous lawsuits, business addresses connected to cocaine trafficking being held in contempt of Parliament. What a few weeks for the disgraced former minister from Edmonton Centre. After he arrogantly lectured other members in this House about their morals and integrity when it comes to their identity, his resignation from Cabinet this week is what I call karma. And yet, as the Liberals lecture others on reconciliation, it was Jody Wilson-Raybould who called their actions shameful and extremely destructive. If the Liberals had any integrity left themselves, not only should he resign from Cabinet, why hasn't he been booted from the Liberal caucus itself?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the House Leader indicated yesterday, we have been very clear in the House that the company was not on the list and that Indigenous procurement is for Indigenous groups. And what we do to see day after day is the gross amount of exaggeration coming from the Conservative ranks. And if they really want to start to do something in terms of what's in Canadians' best interest, they need to look in the mirror, and I'm referring to the Leader of the Conservative Party in particular, Mr. Speaker, and start asking himself the question, what is it that he is hiding that's preventing him from getting the security clearance, Mr. Speaker? Canadians have a right to know he's hiding something. What is it?
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.
They are still defending him. How unethical do you have to be to get the boot out of the Liberal Party of Canada these days? It is crazy. He says he's Indigenous. He's not. He says he isn't the other Randy working at his company. He is. His company isn't supposed to get contracts from the government. It did. And now his business is under multiple criminal investigations, and they share a mailbox with a cocaine trafficker. Yet the Prime Minister just said on Tuesday, quote, he's happy that he's continuing to lead on issues. He's got issues, all right. The question again is, he should not only just not be in Cabinet, he should not be in the Liberal caucus itself. Have some integrity and give him the boot.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, really, talk about unethical. How unethical is it for the Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada to be the only leader not to get the security clearance, Mr. Speaker? Yet we know allegations of interference, foreign interference in his own leadership. We know that there are issues in which the Leader of the Conservative Party should be aware of, but he turns a blind eye to Canadians. Out of pure self-interest, he refuses to get the security clearance. What is it in his past? There is something there that he is not sharing with Canadians. What is it? Why won't he get that security clearance, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, mired in allegations of fraud and conflict and having faked an Indigenous identity, this week the Liberal member for Edmonton Centre resigned from Cabinet in disgrace. Also this week, the Edmonton Police confirmed that they have launched a criminal investigation into the ex-minister's company for fraud. So, in the face of an active police investigation, why is it that the minister's company continues to be green-lighted by these Liberals to bid on federal contracts? Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, that question has already been answered. You know, interesting enough, we have a Conservative caucus that has guidelines and criteria. If you want to be a summer intern, they actually have to get a security clearance, Mr. Speaker. That is such an incredible thing to believe, given that the leader of the Conservative Party believes that he can put his self-interest ahead of the safety and concerns that Canadians have. It does beg the question, and I'll repeat it again for those that don't understand. What is it in the leader of the Conservative Party's background? What is it that's preventing him from getting the security clearance?
The Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal member for Edmonton Centre's company is under police investigation. This is a company that has been ordered by Alberta courts to pay back $8 million to clients for ripping them off. This is a company that fraudulently represented itself as Indigenous-owned in a disgusting attempt to steal government contracts from real Indigenous businesses. This isn't complicated. All the Liberals need to do is put the company on a blacklist. Why won't they?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'll share with any member a Conservative tweet that went out, and get this, listen very closely. Apply for a CPC summer internship today and be the future of the Conservative Party. Mind you, you have to get a security clearance. The question is, Mr. Speaker, maybe the leader of the Conservative Party should apply for an internship program, thereby obligating him to get a security clearance, Mr. Speaker. That's how ridiculous this issue really is. Why won't the leader of the Conservative Party today commit to get a security clearance? That is putting Canadians ahead of himself, Mr. Speaker.
You funded Chinese police state.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
À l'ordre.
Order. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Taxpayers have been robbed of over $100 million this year due to an epidemic of fraud at Canada Revenue Agency. But the last thing the Liberals want is for anyone to talk about it. Wednesday in committee, the minister threatened her own officials that if they keep talking to the media about CRA's problems, they could go to jail. Her priority isn't nabbing fraudsters, it's nabbing reporters' sources. Does the minister realize that fraudsters are the ones who should be threatened with jail, not whistleblowers and not officials? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue.
Fraud very, very seriously. Now, with respect to what the member has talked about, we have supported whistleblower rights as shown in our support of that member's caucus bill, C-290. Which aims to increase protections for whistleblowers. But we need to find the right balance when it comes to making sure that Canadians' data is protected while also ensuring the rights for whistleblowers. The CRA has an internal process for reporting, and we look forward to continuing to work with all members in this House and the CRA to strengthen that process.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are falling far behind. This government has dragged our economic performance down to just 2/3 of the United States. This is costing Canadians on everything that they buy, and paychecks have not kept up with the inflation this government has caused. A recession is defined as 2 quarters of negative economic growth. Canada has seen per capita declines in 8 of the last 9 quarters. This is failure. Will the Liberals call an election so Conservatives can start to fix Canada's budget?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that my honourable colleague forgot to mention was that Canada has sustained a AAA credit rating and the lowest net debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and has repeatedly seen inflation decreasing to 1.6% in September. My honourable colleague mentioned GDP per capita. I take the point. We will continue to examine our economic supports, including making sure we have a tax-free holiday for Canadians, Mr. Speaker, including we have money back in cash for workers.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, even a Prime Minister that doesn't think much about monetary policy told us this past May, as soon as you send people extra money, inflation goes up by that amount. So the government is now proposing to increase inflation and punch our deficit and debt higher. That's like a pyromaniac dressing up like a firefighter. The most inflationary tax is the carbon tax. Well, the Liberals call a carbon tax election so Conservatives can start to fix Canada's budget.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Actually, on this side of the House, what we believe is that investing in people, investing in your economy, leads to greater economic growth. And that's why Canada leads the G7 in terms of net debt to GDP ratio. That's why independent credit rating agencies have said that we should maintain our AAA credit rating. And that's why Canadians have elected us numerous times, defeating many leaders of the official opposition. So I say, Mr. Speaker, let's make sure we continue to support Canadians, and this time with a tax-free holiday.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon University.
Well, folks, the NDP Liberal coalition is back. Did they ever really break up? I don't think so. Remember when the NDP leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people? Well, he just announced that he has confidence in the Liberal Prime Minister until February of 2025. I wonder what happens then. Canadians can't afford this. Now they're trying to bribe you with your own money with a sudden 2-month temporary tax trick. But Canadians won't be fooled. Here's a common sense solution. Axe the carbon tax on everything, for everyone, forever. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election today?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's only one thing that Conservatives hate more than Canada's economy doing well, and it's Liberals putting real and tangible affordability measures to this House of Commons that really help support Canadians. We've done that time and time again, and what did the Conservatives do? They opposed. When we proposed to do a middle-class tax cut way back in 2015, it was one of the first things this government did. They opposed it. And today they're opposing a GST break for the holidays. How cruel can the Conservative Party be?
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon University.
They've been ripping off Canadians for the last 9 years, and Canadians won't be tricked by this most recent trickery. Food prices have risen 36% faster in Canada than the States. Now we have over $2 million people using the food banks every month. In Saskatchewan, food bank use is up over 42%. Now they're promising a temporary 2-month tax trick. Here's the little solution for these guys. You know what they got to do? Axe the tax. And that's all that we're calling for, the carbon tax to be axed. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election today?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
It's interesting that every time they talk about climate change, Mr. Speaker, they never talk about the cost to Canadians of climate impacts. Record level, just for this year, in the months of July and August, $7 billion in climate cost to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, which makes it the most costliest year ever on record. And what's their solution? Let the planet burn. The Leader of the Opposition has voted 400 times. The Conservative Leader of the Opposition has voted 400 times against clean air, clean water, clean environment for Canadian communities. Not on this side of the House. We will be here to support Canadians and to fight climate change.
Once again, I'm encouraging all members please not to take the floor unless recognised by the Chair. The Honourable Member for Central Okanagan, Smilkameen Nicola.
The NDP leader once declared the Liberals were too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. Yet today, he's singing a different tune, backing a plan to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. With food bank visits hitting 2 million in a single month and a quarter of Canadians living in poverty, how many more Canadians need to choose between heating and eating before this Prime Minister realizes his carbon tax coalition is simply a recipe for disaster?
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, what it's a recipe for is supporting Canadians during a difficult time, tax-free on essential goods, diapers, clothes, essentials, groceries, prepared foods, Canadians are going to have support from our government through the holidays. That is, if the Conservatives could decide to actually support Canadians rather than filibustering, being obstructionists, and making sure they're playing their own partisan games. How can they claim to speak for Canadians when they can't even speak for themselves in this caucus?
Yes, exactly. The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Milkameen Nicola.
You can't make this up, Mr. Speaker. They're saying a PlayStation 5 is an essential good. Jeez, with 30% of food banks running out of food and 35% of Canadians feeling worse off financially, this government's appetite for a higher carbon tax seems to be the only thing that's well fed. Now, is the Prime Minister so desperate to cling to power he's resorting to tax tricks, sending people's pennies while he crushes Canadians every April 1st with moving towards a 61 cent a litre carbon tax? When will the Prime Minister realize his carbon tax coalition isn't just running on empty, it's running on fumes?
Here, here. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Crusading against tax cuts over the holidays. Merry Christmas from the Conservative Party of Canada. Let me tell you the reaction about the constituents in Etobicoke Lakeshore who I represent. They are very excited and very grateful. Let me tell you about the small business owners throughout the city of Toronto who are very grateful for this opportunity because it's going to help their businesses and get them through the holidays. They need to support this and stop the nonsense, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River, the honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government is scrapping the iconic Royal Canadian Navy March, Heart of Oak, the song of our Navy for over 100 years. No one is asking for this change except these out-of-touch Liberal elites. Meanwhile, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, the Canadian Forces lacks the subs, ships, and sailors needed to fulfill its mission. Instead of going woke, this government should keep our military from going broke. It's time for these Liberals to put their new heart of woke away and focus on the real priorities. When will they get our sailors the equipment that they need to defend our country and our values?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has the largest coastline, and in the world for that matter, and certainly protecting that coastline is critical. Unlike what happened with the Conservatives in the past, where they cut supports for our Army Navy and the supports for our servicemen on the front lines, we are increasing. At the same time, we're looking at replacing the Victoria-class submarine, which is scheduled to depart in 2030. Meanwhile, we're continuing to look at requests for information to seek renewals of the fleet. Mr. Speaker, we're continuing to support our forces. We're continuing to support Canadian security.
Right on.